Happy New Year! Welcome to the Consumer Toolbox. I'm your host, Milagros Johnson, and I am the director of the Mayor's Office of Consumer Information in Springfield. We are a local consumer program funded by and working in cooperation with the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office. We serve consumers of Hampden County and parts of Worcester County. Our program's mission is to provide you, the consumer, with the necessary tools to make informed decisions. We strive to educate you on your consumer rights and prevent you from becoming a victim of a scam or fraud. Each month, we bring to you a local guest speaker who will share his or her expertise and further enrich you with consumer knowledge. Our motto is education is the best prevention, and the Consumer Toolbox gives you the tools you need to become a savvy consumer. I hope you stay and watch. I have today with me Attorney Alicia Days of the City of Springfield. She is an associate city solicitor and the director of the License Commission. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you. So the reason why I asked you to join us, Attorney Days, is because of the number of complaints that our office takes every year.
Okay.
I just finished doing our reports, our statistics for 2014. And again, for the 14th year in a row, since I've been there, this is my 14th year. For the 14th year, auto sales-related complaints has been our number one complaint.
Okay.
And so with that said, I think it would be a very, very interesting and educating topic for consumers to listen to and learn about what exactly they need to do when they buy a car, or what they need to do before they buy the car. So basically it's about the lemon law.
Sure.
And I know that the city is really involved with helping consumers as well as our program. And I know the License Commission offers some incentives or some programs that consumers can reach for assistance if our office can't resolve it. So in other words,
Sure.
the consumers come to our office, they file a formal written complaint against a dealer because they buy a car that will not pass inspection after they purchase it. We aim to try to resolve the complaint through our mediation services. Unfortunately, sometimes the dealers are, should I say, evasive to our complaints.
Sure.
Many times they do respond, but they're not willing to help resolve the complaint, although the consumer has every right to have that complaint resolved. And we end up, if it's a Springfield dealer, we end up, if we feel that there is a need for them to file a complaint with your office, with your department, we encourage them to do that.
Sure.
And so I know the role of your office, but consumers don't. And so that's why I'm going to ask you to explain it in your words.
Okay, well, the License Commission is actually charged with the responsibility of the issuance of auto dealer licenses, in addition to other things. However, I agree with you that if we receive complaints, it's usually about those individuals who have purchased a car and are unable to get their vehicle to pass inspection. Our process is as follows. If someone comes in with a complaint, we ask that they write it down, and that's a problem sometimes. I mean, I think people have to be willing to come forward because it's necessary that the dealer know who exactly, is complaining so that it can be resolved. So sometimes we get complaints, well, I don't want to come in and I don't want to give my name, but it's important that the consumer understands that it's a necessary evil. We need to know who you are so we can help you. Once a complaint is filed, it goes before the License Commission. The License Commission is a board appointed by the mayor, 4 of those members, and 1 member is actually from a neighborhood council. So there's 5 members of the commission, and they would hear the complaint. Now, I think one of the myths or the misunderstandings about the role of the License Commission is that we can act on the license. So someone can be suspended or their license can be revoked as a result of a consumer complaint. We cannot, however, provide financial repents for them. So what we urge our licensees to do, our car dealers, is we attempt to massage them into it because it is a consideration. If the consumer is satisfied, that will fare better for them when they come to the hearing. So once that's done and a hearing is held, and I will tell you 99% of the time, prior to the hearing, there is some reconciliation. So there is a dealer who will say, okay, I'll just give the money back, or they reach a compromise. So the consumer is made whole again. And that really is the goal.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's
really
great.
the
That's
goal.
great to know. Now, you say consumers sometimes aren't willing to come in. It's funny you should say that, because when they come into our office, which they don't hold back to coming into our office to file a written complaint, we even have your complaint forms available for them. And
Okay.
then we let them know of that option.
Sure.
And if they want to fill it out, they can sit in our office and fill it out, and then we suggest that they hand deliver it to your office. We're not there to throw any particular dealers under the bus.
Correct.
However, if they're not in compliance and they're not doing business in accordance with whether it's regulations or city ordinance,
Sure.
it's important that they be held accountable.
Right. Agreed.
And that if there are issues, that perhaps there may be things that they're not aware of. You know, for example, the lemonade lost stickers on their vehicles. Some of them don't comply. They need to be taught, they need to be told, they need to be educated.
That's right.
So another reason why I wanted you on this show is to educate the consumers, but also the dealers, because a lot of times they want to operate a business, but they don't know how. Or they know how to run the business, but they don't know how to run it correctly.
Correct.
In compliance with the License Commission.
Absolutely. And I think another thing, Milagros, that the consumer doesn't realize, but my office of course knows, is that it's usually the same dealerships. You know, there's not an overabundance of dealerships that have these problems, but what we see is the same dealership over and over again. And that's useful to the License Commission, because you can kind of see, if you will, for lack of a better term, where the bad apple is. And it keeps us on top of that particular licensee to make sure that they're in compliance with the law.
That's great. We see a lot of bad apples. And, you know, we
Sure.
now that you refer to it as bad apples, I mean, I like that term. It's not too offensive or
Right.
offensive, I don't think, at all. But we see them throughout Hamden County, and particularly in Springfield, because that's where a lot of the small mom and pop dealers are. And again, our goal is to educate the consumers
Sure.
and the dealers as well, because they need to do the right thing for consumers. Now, we advocate for consumers, we mediate consumer complaints, but we're also there to educate the dealers as well. I mean,
Sure.
we're the first ones to let them know, listen, this is what the lemon law says. This is what the used vehicle warranty says. I'll be happy to send you a packet of information.
Sure.
So we want to educate both parties.
Sure.
We think a lot of these complaints could be avoided. A lot of the complaints that we refer to your office could be also avoided if the dealers just do what they're supposed to do.
Correct.
One of the things that we see the most of is consumers buy a car and they take it to get inspected and it fails. And then the dealer refuses to fix the car.
Right.
And so what exactly, after they file a complaint with our office and they file a complaint with your office and they go before the commission, what's the next step? What other options are available for the consumer?
Well, what we urge people to do, if in fact, as I said, most of them are resolved either prior to hearing or after the first hearing. However, for those who are unable to get satisfaction from the License Commission, the suggestion is that they file a claim in small claims court. I think that's where you go to next. And in small claims court, of course, they can make you whole in terms of financially, making sure that you're either getting your money back or that you're entitled to another car or credit towards another car. So that's really their role. And I think that while, of course, the License Commission's desire is to make sure that people are made whole, I think it's important for the consumer to understand that that really for us is a tangential issue. Our bigger issue is making sure that the consumers in Springfield are able to go to a car dealer and a car dealer deals with them fairly. And our arm, if you will, would be, you know, if in fact we find someone that is not in compliance and not considerate of the consumer, that we either suspend or revoke that license.
Now, do you reprimand them? Do you say, listen, you're not doing this correctly. This is what you should be doing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And honestly, most of the hearing is devoted to showing them kind of the error of their ways. Well, I'll give you an example. We had a car dealer recently who clearly was actually financing cars and didn't have authority to do that. So, of course, the deal goes bad. The consumer says, no, I made the payments. the dealer says, no, you didn't make the payments, they go and repossess the car. Well, they hadn't given notice, correct notice. They took the car and got rid of the car prior to the statutory period running out for them to be able to sell the car. So we walked them through those steps. You error number one was, error number two was, or error number three was. So yeah, it's our goal, similar to your office, is to educate the dealer as well as the consumer. With respect to the consumers, I think one of the things that you say at the beginning of your show that I think is very powerful and true is prevention really is the best thing. And I think that a lot of smaller used car dealers get references from other people. I'll go to this car dealer. I received a decent deal, and go to that particular person. But you also need, as a consumer, you need to be careful. So if in fact it says financing available, but he's writing it out on a piece of paper and there's not some sort of form or contract that you're signing, then it's really caveat emptor. It's buyer beware. Like really think about the situation that you find yourself in and be discerning before you deal with a particular car dealer if there are red flags that that crop up in your mind.
Right. And I'd like to add to that, as far as the dealers that do in-house financing, they can do in-house financing. However, they must have a license with the Massachusetts Division of Banks.
Correct.
They're required. So those dealers out there who are watching right now, and the consumers who are planning on buying a car from a dealer that offers in-house financing, make sure that the dealer is licensed, legally licensed,
Sure.
with the Massachusetts Division of Banks. And the consumers can call their office in Boston to verify that they do have a license. Don't go by, oh yeah, I have a license, because we hear that a lot.
Right,
Oh yeah, I have a
sure.
license, and when we call to inquire, they don't have a license.
Right.
So, consumers need to, verify that they do have a valid license. It's
Correct.
really important because, again, by not doing business with a business that's not has their ducks in order,
Correct.
they pretty much waive their rights, and it can come back to hurt them if they have to go to court, if they have to go to state-run arbitration. So
Exactly.
that's why it's really important that consumers know what they have to do.
Absolutely.
Now, also, it's tax season, as I mentioned, and consumers are going to be going out buying cars. Not everyone can afford to buy a new car, so they go out and they
Sure.
buy cars. And dealers right now are pretty much getting ready, and they tell me, we get ready, we go out to the auctions and we bring in these cars knowing that consumers are going to be looking for them, and they buy these cars that are not really up to standards. When I say up to standards, meaning that they're not mechanically sound.
Sure.
And they sell them to the consumers. And for example, they sell a car to a consumer and they sell it for $1,500, and they offer it to the consumer, we're going to write this contract for $750 to save you money on your taxes. Is that something that your office will address if the consumer approaches your department?
Absolutely, absolutely. And back to the point of prevention, those are clearly red flags. When people don't want to do things the right way, one should run at that point. And the reality is this, right? When we go to buy a car, everyone's friendly, everyone's happy. They want to get you to sign on the dotted line. You want to be happy because you want your new car. And no one runs to a contract until there's a problem, right? So when things go bad, you take the car for inspection, you can't get it inspected, you can't bring it back because now the car dealer is refusing to do that. A lot of that can be avoided if in fact you just kind of walk in as opposed to running in, and you take a discerning look at exactly what's happening at this dealership, and are they doing things legitimately?
Right. Well, we'll leave it on that note as far as consumers are not walking in, they're running into.
Right.
So we're going to be right back, and when we return, we will be discussing what consumers should be looking out for when they walk into a dealer. We'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back to the Consumer Toolbox. Just before the break, I was talking with attorney Alicia Days of the Springfield License Commission, and she mentioned that a lot of consumers run into a dealer to purchase a vehicle when in fact they should walk into the dealer. So for the second segment of the show, we're going to talk to you and talk about what consumers should do when they walk into a dealer. Okay. So Alicia, can you please tell us what consumers should do when they walk into a dealer? No rush, just walk.
I think one of my first questions would be, are you licensed? I think that's the initial question, is whether or not you're licensed. And you really want to walk, when I say walk into a dealership, it's before you've seen that car that you really want to buy, and they're the only ones who have it, so you want to get that car. But before you've allowed your eye to take hold to a particular vehicle, you want to know that this dealership is legitimate.
Let me interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Should their license be on the wall?
It absolutely should. It should be posted
Okay.
for all consumers to see.
So it's not just, are you licensed, but can I see your license?
Correct.
Okay, perfect,
Correct.
perfect.
And a legitimate dealer is not going to balk at that, because they have one. So I think that's imperative. I think that's the first step. Now, what happens after you select that car that you've been waiting for? You want to make sure that, A, if you're paying cash, that you get a contract, a purchase and sale agreement, or a document that outlines exactly what you're paying for the vehicle, what kind of make it is, make sure the VIN number is present, the date, even though, we think that is something that's profound and everyone understands. But documentation is so key, and especially when you get to a complaint, if you, in fact, get to a complaint arena. Documentation is really going to tell the story.
It's funny because my very first program of the Consumer Toolbox, that's all I talked about. Documentation is key.
Sure.
And I encourage consumers to start gathering their documents and keep a paper trail of everything that goes on from the day you buy that car. Keep a folder, because you never know what's going to go wrong.
Absolutely.
If you file a complaint with our office, those documents are going to be essential, as well as if they file a complaint with your office. If they go to small claims court, they're going to need those documents. So consumers, gather your documents.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if the car is financed, you want to make sure, as you pointed out, Milagros, that in fact they have the authority to do that from the Division of
Banks.
That they can do that. As I shared with you earlier, the complaint that we had recently was really just a piece of paper that the dealer signed and the consumer signed, and there were payments that the consumer said that he made, which he didn't get a receipt for. So of course, again, in the spirit of documentation, those don't really count if you get to a complaint arena. So you want to make sure that your documentation is solid. You want to make sure that it spells out that, in fact, consistent with the Lemon Law, that if the car is taken for inspection and can't pass inspection, that you're eligible to get your money back, because I think that's important too. So when you walk in, you're thinking of all these things. If you're rushing in because you just want this car, I think you miss important pieces that you need to really make sure that you've talked to the dealer about.
I have to say that a lot of times dealers, or any business is quick, they're there to make a sale.
Absolutely.
And I respect that. I mean, that's their livelihood.
Their business.
That's their business.
Right.
The pressure that consumers get is overwhelming. The empty promises that they get as well. They promise, okay, I'm going to fix that for you. I'm going to put in new brakes. I'm going to change the catalytic converter. They may not pass inspection. Would you suggest, or is it required for the dealer to put that on the bill of sale, or not the bill of sale, but the purchase contract?
Absolutely.
Put it in writing.
Absolutely.
I owe you.
Everything that is discussed verbally needs to appear on whatever piece of paper that you're signing.
Perfect. I'm so glad you said that.
Absolutely.
Because consumers don't know that. And now consumers hopefully are getting empowered, and now they know that dealers have obligations and what they are required to do for the consumer. So again, consumers, they should, what? If you can repeat it? As far as the contract?
Yeah.
What it should include?
Everything that is verbally said needs to be written and signed. Absolutely. You know, and I will tell you that the vast majority of dealers, even if there is an initial complaint, will comply and they will repair or, do what's necessary to make sure that the consumer is happy. And as I said, it's important that you bring complaints to our office, because what we see really is a pattern of the same dealerships. And it also puts us on notice that those are the, particular dealerships that we really have to pay close attention to.
What about the title? Should consumers ask, can I see the title? I believe that should be available at the time of sale, and that a vehicle should not be sold, from my understanding, if a dealer does not possess the title at the time of the sales transaction. That vehicle should not be sold.
That's correct. And we've also had complaints where people have said, oh, they told me to come back and get the title. Well, if you're paying for a car in cash, the transfer of the title should occur then. Financing, of course, is a different they're the lien holder, so the title will be held in abeyance, of course, until you've fulfilled the financial obligations. But we're going to send it to you 2 weeks from now. We're going to get it to you next month, and then you're going back and forth to a car dealership to get a title. Is something that should never happen.
What frightens me the most is a lot of times the titles are not available, or the title has issues, or the title was a salvage title. And if the consumers don't ask to see it, that information is not going to be disclosed to consumers.
Right.
And the dealers should let the consumers know, listen, I can't sell you this car because I don't have the title available.
Right.
If you want to come back in a couple of weeks, I can hold it for you, and consumers should not have to give a deposit to hold the vehicle if there's no title, because there's no guarantee. When we see a complaint that has no title, that's a red flag to our office.
Absolutely.
Immediately, that's almost like, okay, this is an easy breezy resolution, because they don't have the title. Consumer is entitled to get their money back. But it's also a big concern that the dealers are doing that, and consumers don't know what their rights are.
Right.
And dealers are getting away with it. And I'm so glad that your office does so much for our city, not just City of Springfield, but for the consumers who come into our city. To purchase a vehicle, because a lot of consumers that don't live in Springfield do come to Springfield, and even though it's where the transaction takes place. So if a consumer lives in Chicopee, for example, or Agawam, and they buy a car in Springfield, they can still use your services.
Correct.
Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So it goes by where the car was purchased.
That's correct.
Okay.
So as long as it was in Springfield.
And the dealer is licensed through Springfield.
Yes.
That's great. And our office serves consumers of Hampden County and a third of Worcester County.
I see.
So I'm hoping that from this program, the cities and towns that are watching, those city departments, will get empowered as well, and perhaps be willing to do the same thing that the City License Commission, the City of Springfield License Commission, and use them as a role model, because I can't thank you enough, honestly. I know I've seen results. I've heard of results. Consumers come back, or we talk once in a while, and we hear what the outcome of a complaint, and I know the work is getting done, and that your department is definitely looking out for consumers, and I'm hoping that this will be a lesson for other cities and towns as well.
Well, thank you.
And I hope that you become available to them if they have questions on how it is that you got it to run so efficiently and organized. So
thank you.
if you can give your number to those departments, that would be great.
Okay. Should I do that now?
Yeah,
Okay.
please do.
My direct dial is 413-787-6157. That's my direct dial. And I have 2 assistants that work with me in the actual License Commission office. And the number for the License Commission office is 413-787-6196. And you can feel free to reach out to us. I think that, as with all things, it takes a village, and we can each help each other with more efficiencies. There are probably license commissions out there that I have not talked to who could also provide us with information that would be useful for our office.
That's wonderful.
Well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, can consumers file a complaint online with your department?
They can't online.
Okay.
They have to physically bring it in to us. And our License Commission meets twice a month. We meet on the first and third Thursdays of each month. So once we receive the complaint, we'll make sure that it reaches our agenda so that the consumer can be heard.
Okay. And is the consumer invited to attend that hearing?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is the
Absolutely.
public invited
The public is invited as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an open meeting.
And how do consumers know of the License Commission hearings against a dealer? Is it posted on the city website calendar?
It is.
It
It's
is,
posted
okay.
on both the city website calendar as well as in City Hall on the first floor outside of the clerk's office.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I encourage consumers to visit the city website then.
Absolutely.
SpringfieldCityHall.com, and be on the lookout for those dealers that are being brought before the License Commission.
Absolutely.
That's great to know. Any other information that you wish to provide?
I guess the one thing, and we've talked about it extensively, is the fact that consumers really are their best advocate. And I think it's important, again, that you walk into the dealership and recognize any signs that you see that show you that a dealer is not reputable. And I say that you follow those signs and don't enter into those deals, because there's plenty of reputable dealers out here that would be glad to assist you in finding your next car.
And if I can add to that, there's plenty of other cars out there
Absolutely.
that they can buy. So that's not the
Absolutely.
only little shiny, perfect little red car.
That's
It may be
right.
shiny on the outside, but you don't know what's going on the inside.
Absolutely.
So consumers need to step back and don't rush into anything, and walk into a dealer informed, educated, well prepared and knowledgeable, and have the tools, the consumer tools, to make a wise purchase.
Absolutely.
I think I'll end it on that, unless you want to add anything else.
I think that's it. Thank you
Okay.
again for
No,
inviting
thank you
me.
for having me. This is wonderful. It's been educating for me too, so this
Very
is really,
good.
really great. Thank
Great.
you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Well, I hope you found today's program informative and empowering. I most certainly did. If you liked what you heard and want to stay informed, I encourage you to follow us on Twitter at Springfield LCP. You can also find many resources and information on our city website at springfieldcityhall.com. But most importantly, you may reach us live at 787-6437 if you wish to ask a question or speak to one of our mediators. Thank you for watching the Consumer Toolbox. Have a safe and wonderful day, and I guess I'll see you again next month. Thank you for watching.